I need you to hear me out, because what I'm about to tell you still makes my hands shake when I think about it. My best friend Joelle grabbed my arm so hard her nails broke the skin. Her voice came out in this strangled whisper, "Sadie, that's not your reflection." I laughed. I thought she was messing with me. We'd been drinking wine, unpacking boxes all day. I figured she was trying to scare me because I'd just moved into my dead grandmother's creepy old Victorian house. Then I looked at the mirror. My reflection was smiling, a big, wide, unnatural smile that stretched too far across my face. But my mouth was closed. I wasn't smiling at all. Before we go any further, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button, because this story only gets stranger from here. My name is Sadie Brennan. I'm 24 years old. I work as a pediatric nurse in Albany, New York. I'm a normal person. I pay my taxes. I call my friends on their birthdays. I don't believe in ghosts or demons or anything like that. At least I didn't. Not until that weekend in October when I moved into my grandmother's house and discovered that the antique mirror in the upstairs hallway held something that had been waiting for me my entire life. Joelle Patterson has been my best friend since freshman year of college. We met in a statistics class that we both almost failed. She's the kind of friend who drives 4 hours just to help you unpack boxes and drink cheap wine. She's practical. She's logical. She doesn't scare easily. So when I saw the terror on her face that night, when I watched the color drain from her cheeks as she stared at my reflection, I knew something was very, very wrong. This is the story of what happened in that house, what I found in my grandmother's journal, and the horrible truth about why she left me that mirror in the first place. 6 months before that night, my grandmother Rosemary Brennan passed away in her sleep. She was 87 years old. She went peacefully, which is the only comfort I have when I think about her now. My grandmother raised me. My parents died in a car accident when I was 9 years old. I remember the police officers coming to school to pick me up. I remember my teacher's face, the way she couldn't look me in the eyes. I remember my grandmother waiting for me at her house, arms open, tears streaming down her face. She took me in without question. She gave up her quiet retirement to raise a grieving little girl. She taught me how to braid my hair. She made me pancakes every Sunday morning. She read to me every night until I was old enough to read to myself. And even then, sometimes she still would. That house in upstate New York was the only real home I ever knew. Every good memory I have lives inside those walls. The smell of lavender sachets in the closets, the creak of the third step on the staircase, the way the afternoon sun came through the kitchen window and made everything glow golden. When she died, she left me everything: the house, her savings, all of her belongings, including the antique mirror that had hung in the upstairs hallway for as long as I could remember. I always loved that mirror. It had this beautiful gold frame, all carved with flowers and vines. The glass was old, slightly spotted in the corners with age, but it had character, history. My grandmother used to polish it every Sunday morning before church. I would sit on the floor and watch her, and she would tell me stories about our family. But there was one thing she said that I never forgot. I was maybe 12 years old. I had stayed up late reading a book and went to the bathroom around midnight. On my way back to my room, I stopped in front of the mirror. I don't know why. Something about it looked different in the dark. The glass seemed deeper somehow, like I could fall into it. My grandmother's voice came from behind me, sharp and urgent. "Sadie, come away from there." I turned around. She was standing in her bedroom doorway in her nightgown, and her face looked pale, almost scared. "Never look into it too long after dark, sweetheart," she said. "Just a silly superstition. Come on, let's get you to bed." She never explained what she meant, and I never asked. Kids accept strange things from the adults they love. I just added it to the list of weird grandmother rules, like never putting shoes on the table or always throwing salt over your shoulder if you spill it. I wish I had asked. I wish I had pushed her to explain. Maybe things would have been different. After she died, I lived in my small apartment in Albany for 6 months, trying to figure out what to do with the house. Selling it felt wrong, like I would be erasing her, erasing my childhood, erasing the only place I ever felt safe. So I decided to move in. I quit my job at the hospital in Albany and found a position at a smaller clinic nearby. I packed up my apartment. I called Joelle and asked if she wanted to spend the weekend helping me unpack. Road trip to a creepy old Victorian house? She said. I'll bring the wine. That was Joelle, always ready for an adventure, always making everything feel lighter than it was. She arrived on Friday afternoon. The October leaves were turning red and gold, and the house looked beautiful, warm, welcoming. Nothing about it seemed wrong or dangerous. It was just my grandmother's house. My house now. We spent all day Saturday unpacking. We laughed. We told stories. We found old photo albums and spent an hour looking through pictures of me as a kid with missing teeth and bad haircuts. Joelle teased me about my fashion choices in middle school. I threatened to show her college boyfriend the photos of her from freshman year. It was a good day, a healing day. I felt like I was finally starting to move forward, like I could honor my grandmother's memory by filling this house with life again. By evening, we were exhausted. The sun was setting, casting long orange light through the windows. We had just finished unpacking the last box in my grandmother's old bedroom, and we decided to take a break. Wine time, Joelle announced. We've earned it. We grabbed our glasses and walked into the upstairs hallway. That's where the mirror hung, right between my childhood bedroom and the bathroom. We were standing there, catching our breath, talking about ordering pizza for dinner, and then Joelle stopped mid-sentence. Her whole body went rigid. Her eyes locked onto something behind me. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she was going to faint. Joelle, what's wrong? She didn't answer. She just reached out and grabbed my arm. Her grip was so tight that her nails dug into my skin. I still have the little crescent-shaped scars. Sadie, her voice was barely a whisper, that's not your reflection. I turned to look at the mirror, and that's when I saw it. My reflection was smiling at me, this huge, stretched, wrong smile, like someone had taken my face and pulled the corners of the mouth too far apart. But I wasn't smiling. My face was frozen in confusion. I blinked. My reflection blinked half a second too late. I told myself I imagined it. That's what you do when something impossible happens right in front of your face. Your brain rejects it, finds a logical explanation, buries the truth under a pile of maybes and probably justs. Maybe the wine was stronger than I thought. Maybe the old glass warped my reflection somehow. Maybe I was just exhausted from unpacking all day, and my eyes were playing tricks on me. Joelle wasn't buying it. She stood in the hallway with her arms wrapped around herself, refusing to take her eyes off the mirror. Her hands were shaking so bad she had to set her wine glass on the floor before she dropped it. Sadie, we need to leave, she said. Right now. Tonight. We can get a hotel and figure this out in the morning. I should have listened to her. Looking back, that was the moment I could have walked away, driven to the nearest town, called someone, done anything other than what I actually did, which was convince my terrified best friend that we were both being ridiculous. It's an old mirror, I said. The glass is probably warped, and we've been drinking. Let's just cover it up and go to sleep. Everything will seem normal in the morning. Joelle looked at me like I had lost my mind, but she also knew how much this house meant to me, how much my grandmother meant to me. She didn't want to be the one to ruin my first weekend in my new home over something that might have been nothing. So we compromised. We found a white bedsheet in the linen closet and draped it over the mirror. Joelle insisted on sleeping downstairs on the couch, and honestly, I didn't argue. I didn't want to be alone upstairs either. We pushed the couch and the armchair together and made a little nest of blankets and pillows. We turned on every lamp in the living room. We told ourselves we were being silly, but neither of us turned those lights off. I fell asleep around midnight. The last thing I remember is Joelle's breathing evening out beside me and the sound of the old house settling in the cold October night. The next thing I remember is Joelle screaming. I opened my eyes and I wasn't on the couch anymore. I was standing in the upstairs hallway, right in front of the mirror. The bed sheet was on the floor at my feet. My hand was pressed flat against the cold glass. I had no memory of walking up there, no memory of pulling the sheet down, no memory of anything between falling asleep on the couch and waking up with my palm against that mirror. Joelle was at the bottom of the stairs, her face twisted in horror. She kept screaming my name over and over, but I couldn't move. I couldn't pull my hand away from the glass. It felt like something was holding me there, something on the other side. I looked at my reflection. It wasn't copying me anymore. It was just standing there, watching me, its head tilted slightly to the side like a curious animal. And then, slowly, deliberately, it raised its hand and waved at me. I didn't move my hand. I couldn't move my hand, but my reflection waved at me like we were old friends. I finally screamed. The sound broke whatever spell was holding me, and I stumbled backwards so fast I hit the opposite wall. Joelle ran up the stairs and grabbed me, pulling me toward the staircase, her fingernails digging into my shoulders. We didn't sleep for the rest of the night. We sat in the kitchen with every light blazing, drinking coffee and trying to make sense of what happened. Joelle wanted to leave. She begged me to pack a bag and get out of that house. But something kept me there. Some stubborn part of me that refused to believe my grandmother's house could be dangerous. That refused to believe she would leave me something that could hurt me. When the sun came up, I made a decision. I was going to search this house from top to bottom. If something strange was going on, there had to be an explanation. My grandmother kept everything, every letter, every photograph, every document. If there was a secret about that mirror, I was going to find it. Joelle didn't want me to go into the attic alone, so we went together. The attic was dusty and cramped, filled with boxes and old furniture covered in white sheets. It smelled like mothballs and forgotten years. We searched for almost an hour before Joelle found it shoved in the corner behind a broken rocking chair. A small wooden box with a brass lock. The lock was old and rusted, and it broke easily when I hit it with a hammer. Inside, I found a stack of yellowed photographs, a newspaper clipping from 1952, and a leather journal with my grandmother's handwriting on every page. The photographs showed a young woman who looked almost exactly like me. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, same shape of the face. On the back of one photo, someone had written a name in faded pencil, Vivian Brennan, 1951. I had never heard that name before. My grandmother never mentioned having a sister. The newspaper clipping was short, just a few paragraphs about a young woman named Vivian Brennan, who died suddenly in her family home at the age of 23. The cause of death was listed as heart failure. There was no funeral announcement, no follow-up story, just a brief notice that she was gone. But it was my grandmother's journal that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family, everything I thought I knew about the woman who raised me. My grandmother's handwriting was small and neat, the kind of careful cursive they used to teach in schools back in the 1940s. The journal was dated 1952, the same year Vivian died. I sat on the dusty attic floor with Joelle beside me and read every word while my hands trembled so bad I could barely hold the pages. Rosemary wrote about her sister with so much love at first. Vivian was the beautiful one, the talented one, the one everyone in town admired. She was 2 years older than Rosemary and had just gotten engaged to a young man from a wealthy family. Their future seemed bright and perfect. But then Vivian started acting strange. It began with the mirror. Vivian became obsessed with it. She would stand in front of it for hours, talking to her reflection like it was a separate person. She told Rosemary that she could see another version of herself inside the glass, a better version, a version that understood her in ways nobody else could. Rosemary thought her sister was having a nervous breakdown. She begged their parents to call a doctor. But this was 1952, and people didn't talk about mental illness the way we do now. They told Rosemary to stop being dramatic. One night, Rosemary woke up to the sound of her sister screaming. She ran to the upstairs hallway and found Vivian collapsed in front of the mirror. Her body was still. Her eyes were open and empty. And according to what my grandmother wrote in her journal, Vivian's reflection was still moving inside the glass, still smiling, still waving, even though Vivian herself was dead on the floor. Their parents found a doctor who agreed to write heart failure on the death certificate. The family buried Vivian quietly and never spoke about what really happened. Everyone was told that she died peacefully in her sleep. The mirror stayed in the hallway because their mother refused to get rid of it. She said it had been in the family for 4 generations, and throwing it away would be disrespectful to their ancestors. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came later in the journal. in entries my grandmother wrote years afterward, pages where her handwriting became shaky and desperate, pages where she confessed what she had done. Rosemary was 20 years old when she got sick, some kind of wasting illness that the doctors couldn't explain. She was dying slowly, painfully, and there was nothing anyone could do. One night, alone in the house, she stood in front of the mirror and begged for help. She said she would give anything to live, anything at all. Something answered her, something inside the mirror. It told her that it could save her life, but it needed a promise in return. It needed someone else, someone from the family bloodline, someone who looked like Vivian. Rosemary was so scared of dying that she agreed. She made a deal with whatever lived inside that glass, and her illness disappeared within a week. She spent the next 50 years regretting it. The journal was filled with her attempts to break the bargain, prayers, rituals, consultations with priests and psychics, and anyone who would listen. Nothing worked. The entity in the mirror was patient. It told her it would wait. It had waited for centuries before. It could wait a little longer for the right person to come along. I was the right person. I looked like Vivian. I was the same age Vivian was when she died, and my grandmother had raised me in this house, near this mirror, preparing me for something I never knew was coming. I dropped the journal on the floor. I couldn't breathe. Joelle was saying something, but her voice sounded far away, like she was speaking underwater. The woman who raised me, who loved me, who made me pancakes and braided my hair and read me bedtime stories, had made a deal to trade my life for hers decades before I was even born. Joelle grabbed my shoulders and forced me to look at her. She told me we were leaving right now and never coming back. We would burn this house to the ground if we had to. But I knew running wouldn't help. I had seen my reflection in my phone screen that morning while we were searching the attic. It was smiling at me. The thing in the mirror was already attached to me. It didn't matter where I went. It would follow. There was only one choice. I had to find a way to end this. I had to break the deal my grandmother made and destroy whatever was living inside that mirror before it destroyed me first. Joelle found Dolores Vance through a desperate internet search. She was a retired librarian who lived about 30 minutes away in a small town near the Hudson River. Her website was simple and outdated, just a plain page with her name and a description of the services she offered: spiritual cleansing, entity removal, help for people experiencing unexplainable phenomena. She wasn't a psychic or a medium or anything dramatic like that. She was just a woman who had learned certain techniques from her grandmother and had spent her life helping people deal with things they couldn't explain. Dolores arrived at the house an hour before midnight. She was 68 years old with silver hair pulled back in a braid and calm brown eyes that seemed to take in everything without judgment. She walked through the house slowly, stopping in front of the covered mirror without touching it. She stood there for a long time, just breathing, just listening to something we couldn't hear. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but certain. She told us that something very old was attached to that mirror, something that existed before mirrors were even invented. It moved from reflective surface to reflective surface throughout history, feeding on people by learning them, copying them, and eventually replacing them entirely. It studied your face, your movements, your mannerisms, your voice. Once it finished learning you, it would step out of the mirror and take your place. The original person would be pulled inside the glass and trapped there forever, while the copy lived their life. Vivian was almost replaced, Dolores explained. The entity had been learning her for months, but something went wrong during the final stage. Vivian's heart gave out from the stress before the switch could happen. She died, and the entity was stuck inside the mirror, incomplete and hungry. It made the deal with my grandmother because it needed someone new, someone who looked enough like Vivian to finish what it started, someone like me. Dolores told us there was only one way to break the connection. I had to confront the entity directly at midnight, the same hour Vivian died. I had to stand in front of the mirror and reject it out loud. I had to deny its claim to my life, my body, my identity. While I did that, Dolores would perform a cleansing ritual to weaken the entity and sever its hold on the mirror. But there was a catch. If I showed any fear, any hesitation, any doubt at all. The entity would use that weakness to pull me inside and complete the replacement. I had never been more terrified in my life. Joelle begged me not to do it. She said we could find another way. We could seal the mirror in concrete and dump it in the river. We could move across the country and pretend none of this ever happened, but I knew it wouldn't matter. The thing was already inside my reflections. My phone, my bathroom mirror, the windows of my car. Everywhere I looked, it was looking back. Running would only delay the inevitable. At midnight, we uncovered the mirror. The hallway was cold. So cold I could see my breath forming little clouds in front of my face. Dolores lit white candles and burned sage, filling the air with thick gray smoke. She began chanting something in a language I didn't recognize, words that sounded ancient and heavy with power. I stepped in front of the mirror. My reflection was already waiting for me, but it wasn't copying my movements anymore. It stood perfectly still, watching me with my own eyes. Its head tilted slightly to the side like a predator studying its prey. The smile on its face was wrong, stretched too wide, showing too many teeth. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could say anything, my reflection spoke first. It used my voice, but hollow and empty, like someone talking from the bottom of a well. It said, "Your grandmother promised me someone. It said she kept me waiting so long. It said I looked, just like Vivian, and that it had been dreaming of my face for decades." Something inside me broke when I heard those words. All the grief I had been carrying since my grandmother died, all the love I still felt for her despite what I had learned, it all twisted into something new, something angry, something powerful. I stepped closer to the mirror and spoke clearly without a single shake in my voice. I said, "I reject this bargain. I said, I reject your claim to my life. I said my grandmother made a choice out of fear, but I am not afraid of you. I told it that this is my body, my identity, my existence, and I will never let anything take that from me." The reflection stopped smiling. Its face twisted into something ugly and hateful, something that didn't look human at all anymore. The glass began to vibrate. The candles flickered wildly. Dolores chanted louder, her voice rising over the sound of the wind that had started howling through the hallway, even though every window was closed. I grabbed the frame of the mirror and pushed with everything I had. The mirror fell. The glass shattered against the wooden floor, with a sound like 100 bones breaking at once. But instead of scattering across the hallway, the pieces froze in midair. They hung there for a moment, suspended like stars, and then they flew backward into the frame and reassembled themselves into a perfect mirror that showed nothing but pure darkness. I watched as the darkness began to drain away, swirling down like water disappearing down a sink. Slowly, gradually, the glass became clear again, and when I looked into it, I saw my own reflection staring back at me, moving when I moved, blinking when I blinked. Nothing more than a reflection should ever be. It was over. For a long time, none of us moved. We just stood there in the hallway, staring at the mirror, waiting for something else to happen. The candles had burned down to stubs. The sage smoke had faded into nothing. The terrible cold that had filled the house was gone, replaced by the normal chill of an October night. Dolores was the first to speak. She said the attachment was severed. The entity was gone. Whatever ancient thing had lived inside that glass for generations had finally been destroyed. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel victory. I just felt empty, hollowed out like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything that made me who I was. Joelle wrapped her arms around me and held on tight, and I let her, because I didn't have the strength to stand on my own anymore. Dolores stayed with us until sunrise. She explained that the entity wasn't connected to Vivian's spirit at all. Vivian was never haunting that mirror. She was just another victim, another person the thing tried to consume before it was stopped. My grandmother had believed she was keeping her sister's memory alive by preserving the mirror, but really she was just feeding the creature, keeping it strong, keeping it patient while it waited for me. After Dolores left, I sat in the kitchen with Joelle and tried to process everything I had learned. The woman who raised me, the woman I loved more than anyone else in the world, had traded my life for hers before I was even born. She made a deal with something evil because she was afraid to die, And then she spent 50 years raising me like a lamb being prepared for slaughter. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't that simple. Nothing ever is. My grandmother left that locked box where I would find it. She wrote everything down in her journal, every detail, every piece of information I needed to understand what was happening and how to stop it. She could have destroyed those documents. She could have let me walk into that mirror blind and unprepared, but she didn't. She left me a warning. She left me a weapon. Maybe it was her way of trying to save me after all those years of guilt. Maybe it was the only apology she knew how to give. I will never know for certain what was in her heart. I will never be able to ask her why she made the choices she made, or whether she regretted them in the end. All I have are her words on those yellowed pages, and the memory of the woman who braided my hair and made me pancakes, and told me she loved me every single day of my childhood. I have to believe that love was real. I have to believe that people can carry darkness inside them and still be capable of genuine love. Because if I don't believe that, then everything good about my life becomes a lie, and I refuse to let that be true. I kept the house. It felt wrong to leave after everything that happened. This place is still my home. It still holds every good memory I have. The evil that lived here is gone now, and what remains is just wood and stone, and the echo of the people who lived here before me. I planted a rose bush in the backyard and buried the pieces of the mirror beneath it, wrapped in salt and sealed with prayers that Dolores taught me. The roses bloomed bright red the following spring, and I choose to believe that means something. I choose to believe it means the darkness is finally at rest. Joelle still comes to visit, though she refuses to stay overnight. She says she supports my healing journey but draws the line at sleeping in a house where she once watched my reflection wave at me. I don't blame her. Some experiences leave marks that never fully fade, but she calls me every Sunday morning, right around the time my grandmother used to make pancakes, and we talk for hours about nothing and everything. That friendship saved my life in more ways than one. I hung a painting where the mirror used to be, a simple landscape of rolling hills and a setting sun. Something peaceful, something that doesn't reflect anything back. Sometimes I catch myself glancing at that spot on the wall, expecting to see my own face staring back at me. But there's nothing there, just colors on canvas, just art, just peace. I learned something important that weekend in October. I learned that the people who love us can still carry secrets that would destroy us if we knew. I learned that fear can make good people do terrible things. And I learned that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't hiding in mirrors or lurking in the dark. Sometimes they're sitting across from you at the dinner table, smiling, telling you they love you, hiding the truth behind their eyes. But I also learned that we are not bound by the choices of the people who came before us. My grandmother made a deal, but I broke it. She handed me a destiny I never asked for, and I rejected it. We all inherit things from our families: trauma, secrets, debts we never agreed to pay. But we also inherit strength, courage, the ability to look into the darkness and say no, not me, not today. If you have ever looked into a mirror and felt like something was looking back, if you have ever inherited something from your family that felt heavier than it should, I want you to know that you are not alone, and you are not trapped. The deals that other people made do not have to define your life. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it meant something to you, subscribe to this channel and leave a comment telling me about a time you felt like something was watching you. I read every single comment, and your stories mean more to me than you know. Share this with someone who loves a good scary story, and I will see you in the next one. Stay safe out there, and maybe don't look into old mirrors after dark.